Hello, Rachel. Welcome to the New Mid.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I am good. I'm so glad you're here to talk about a lot of us midlife moms. We have teenagers that are kind of going through a lot right now with COVID, and also a lot of midlife moms with autistic children on various um, parts of the spectrum. What have you noticed in your practice recently with autistic children and with teenagers during COVID?
Well, you're right. I mean, these groups of children have really been hit hard during all of this, as so many people have. But I honestly think that one of the one of the biggest challenges that we've seen has been the social aspect and just being away from the supports of other people. We're talking about kids that went from a school environment who had staff and teachers and their peers, and that was really motivating and really supportive for so many. So I'm really noticing that that is one of the biggest challenges that I've seen. So students, of course, they thrive when they're in supportive environments. And even though this can occur at home, a supportive family, they're still missing the supports of so many other adults that were vital and are vital in helping them stay motivated. So especially, children on the autism spectrum, they may be feeling a bit distant, and also, of course, teenagers here are feeling very distant.
Well, speaking of autistic children, we know that there's a spectrum that go from low functioning to high functioning. So how can families who have children that have severe autism cope with the stress and enduring, frequent meltdowns, inflexibility, social isolation, and just being targets for aggressive behavior, during the pandemic? Because, resources and opportunities are unavailable right now.
hmm Well, unfortunately, because we are, home so often, we are the models, for our children. So that can be a really great thing, and that can be a really stressful thing. So I think one of the most important pieces is to be sure that our home environment is positive and loving, and we've got that great connection with our children, providing that support. Even if academics are not the main focus, maybe just connection and relationship is the focus, and then everything else builds off of that. Um, but in terms of making sure that we are able to handle those meltdowns and those aggressive behaviors, I think that parents really need to be sure that they are engaging in regular self-care, which I know sounds it sounds hard. Honestly, it sounds really hard because we're working, we're managing households, we're teaching in some ways, right? We're taking care of other children and so on. So sadly, we put ourselves off sometimes, but we need to remember how important it really is to care for ourselves right now as well. Um, Making sure that also we're not putting too much pressure on ourselves to be in that teacher role, but instead a school support role. But other opportunities outside of that, some of the thoughts that I was having were, is there any ability for respite care, even from friends, really close friends, or maybe family members, and not overnight or maybe not long term, but even just a day, a couple of hours away? Would that be something that we could, advocate for ourselves and really just say, hey, I really need some time. Is there any way that you could help me out on Tuesday or whatever? There's a lot of moms groups that are really supportive and really open for that connection and feedback. Maybe making play dates if that's something that people are comfortable with right now, which I know because of COVID, some people are not, and that's okay. But maybe Zoom call entertainment, can you have your kids meet for a play date via that and play a game together? We have to be creative, right? But churches, there's a lot of youth groups that are still meeting. They're still connecting in person and also over technology. So I feel like that could be a really great opportunity for some kids to still connect with others, whether or not, teenagers, younger children, those that have, a diagnosis or something that they would really benefit too from that social skill. There's a lot of, local groups also on Facebook. There's the Autism Parents of Frederick, Maryland, and they have like just, connections with local people that you can talk to or maybe even meet. Parent support groups are a really great option as well. The Autism Society of America has a Frederick, Maryland group, and they actually meet regularly and provide support to parents and children also. And maybe also, thinking, here I'm a therapist, so I'm going to plug this in, but, because of some aggression or maybe behavior issues or relationship skills, social skills, maybe it would be, in the child's best interest to begin meeting with a therapist to be able to have that connection, learn those skills and techniques to be able to manage anger and anxiety and all the other things that, of course, are coming up. But just overall, in talking about, teenagers, going backwards a little bit, again, like I'm noticing a lot of challenges with teens and, the encouragement that they have, and maybe recognizing that they don't have a lot of encouragement without having that support from other adults. So making sure that, we're still talking about, encouraging our students to do the work, to be present, to engage with different people and different opportunities, despite their desire to do it. A lot of students right now are lacking motivation with that, which makes it kind of difficult.
Well,
but not
it's
wanting
interesting.
to lose that big picture.
Right. It's interesting because you do say about how you talk to them, the words that you actually say to them is really important. And I know a lot of times we might not consciously think of the words that we're saying to our teenagers or to our autistic children, but I think that's a valid point that you bring up. So how
thank
about
you. It's again that modeling.
Right. Now, do you have any suggestions for helping the siblings of children with these types of difficulties? Because they might feel, a bit left out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when children have siblings with special needs and behavior issues or just need more time, it's right. I mean, they're going to feel upset. They're going to feel left out. But I think that's okay for them to feel. I think that we might expect that they just get it. They're not always going to get it. It doesn't always make sense to them. Other children might get more parental attention, but that's okay that they understand and that they can be upset about that sometimes, because that's a normal human feeling to feel left out. So they're naturally going to feel left out at times. They might notice irritation with their sibling. They might say things like, it's not fair, when their sibling needs more one-on-one time with their parent. So children with these types of difficulties, maybe autism or another concern might, take much more time, resources, patience, not only from the parents, but from the other people in the family system as well. So I think one of the biggest things would be to speak to your child about just autism, right? What are the limitations? What kind of skills would be helpful to communicate and understand their sibling? Creating a supportive environment for talking about each other's challenges and abilities, and really normalizing what that's like, that somebody might have a challenge here and so do I, and here is where we can connect on those kinds of things.
Right.
I was looking, on the Autism Society, website, and they talked a lot about, how you can connect and engage from a child's perspective, how you can connect and engage with somebody that has autism. And I thought they had some really great, some ideas, just being able to talk openly and share that just because they might not be as verbal as a child their age, that doesn't mean that they're not smart or that they don't have things to share. Making sure that maybe we're drawing pictures or writing the things that we want our sibling or our family member to understand that might have autism. Making sure to be very patient, giving time for the person to answer us. They might need more time, teach them by showing them, just be maybe, we all learn in a different way. And that was something that's also really important. And then just, again, that environment for talking about things, just really giving the child the opportunity to ask their teachers and parents about the limitations of autism, what that looks like, letting that conversation happen.
Right. Now, do you think it's fair to say that you could try to have special time with the sibling so that they do have sort of their special time with a parent, doing one-on-one. I know that sort of creates lot more work for the parent, but that might be a fun thing to do.
Oh, I think so. I think that all around that has to be something that's routine, because again, if there's a parent who's taking care of a child with autism and they're naturally going to spend more time, they're going to be, they have a lot more to do to be able to, again, explain or handle behavior issues. So a lot of that time could be stressful. So can we make time also that's not so stressful? That's a little bit more unplanned or maybe fun or child led. And then of course siblings, getting their own time together and of course one-on-one.
That's great. Well, when working with a child who has sort of low functioning and has limited verbal communication, what is the difference between an incentive and a bribe?
Yeah. So I think clear expectations really help us understand from the get-go, like, are we providing an incentive or are we really bribing our kids? So incentive is the pre-planned, it's giving a choice and that choice is affirming positive behavior. Whereas bribery typically happens after the child's already had an undesirable behavior. So for example, we're getting ready to go into this time of doing virtual learning, and that's going to be, I guess, pretty stressful, right? For a lot of people. But let's say, for instance, that a parent asks their child to start their schoolwork for the day, but the child's already engrossed in another activity, right? And they in no way are interested in the schoolwork or the Zoom call or whatever else is coming up. So you ask and you encourage and you've got that great mommy voice on and you're really trying to get them interested and it's just not happening, right? So they don't transition. They stay in that activity that they're doing. So after you've asked and they haven't complied, you take away their game or their source of entertainment, whatever that was. And then your child's upset, right? They're upset and they hit you, they throw something, they yell because they want to play instead of doing the schoolwork. So after you've done the nice mommy talk and you've really tried to encourage and it's not worked, you're frustrated and you're losing your cool and you probably feel tapped out at that point and you give in. And so then you tell your child, okay. So, after you play your game for 30 more minutes, then you're really seriously going to do your homework, okay? And then they now learn that that's a bribe, right? They learn that I pushed my parents' buttons. I might have even hurt them or said mean words, but I got what I wanted, which is not to do my schoolwork, right? So they were essentially rewarded for disobeying. And then they took that control away from mom and dad. So the opposite of that, right, is the incentive part, which would be the pre-planned, organized system to first doing what's being asked and then maybe the schoolwork or completing a task. So first doing that schoolwork or the task and then being rewarded with like an incentive afterwards. So another, kind of going back to that Zoom and the virtual learning, for instance, they might have 3 assignments to complete before their school day is over. So you have a system, some way of keeping track of this. Maybe it's a planner, maybe it's a whiteboard with a checkbox system. They can put a sticker, they can check off when they've done the assignment. So they already know that per this organization, that at the end of the day, when these 3 items are taken care of, that if they haven't had a complete meltdown or tantrum, that they're given the incentive for doing these 3 things. And my idea of incentives would be something like going on, having special one-on-one time with mom or dad and going on a walk or maybe going to the park, maybe getting to bake or create their preferred dessert, 15 minutes of later bedtime, and then, or maybe like the choice of the family game that the family is going to play together after dinner. So the difference in the incentive and the bribe is the same, honestly, regardless of the child, but it's the choice and the control that really depends on that level of functioning and understanding for each person. And then I really, I do a lot to help parents understand that making sure that the incentives are not extravagant or they're not even, gifts, prizes, things like that, but instead surrounded by like spending time with others, maybe having special privilege, something that still builds their confidence and builds relationship versus just obtaining an item as a
You
reward.
I love that. I think that's good for any children. I think that really
Mm-hmm.
works well for anyone. So now for more high
Yeah.
functioning autistic children, the lockdown might have actually been a relief for them, a welcome relief, because then they don't have to worry about the everyday socialization. Will that affect their socializing skills overall? And if so, what can parents do to help them?
I think the lockdowns affected all of our social skills, right? Like, I mean, oh man, it's interesting just to see how things change when we're not face to face with people for too long. But yeah, I really do think that the lockdown has been really, really difficult with those social skills, and that it does definitely affect them. We might see some regression. We might see that somebody was doing pretty well, before all of this happened in school, and they had peers and they were connecting. But then sadly, once that ended and they were home, maybe they lost those connections and just naturally lost what that feels like or looks like. And so that's hard for them. But I really do feel like there's continued opportunity to grow, trying not to remain stagnant where their skills are socially, but really giving them those opportunities to learn and practice. So simple ways we can do this, maybe giving them the opportunity to vouch for themselves, right? Like give a preference, make a choice, offer their opinion or their story or something to somebody in your family or otherwise also. Maybe ordering for themselves. We're doing a lot of drive-through or maybe takeout now that we're feeling a bit more comfortable maybe. So maybe they're able to order for themselves. Can they make a phone call to somebody? Can we set that up for them? Are they able to themselves email a teacher and share concerns that they're having versus the parents taking that role, but maybe really the child giving them that responsibility? Sending a letter or a postcard to someone. It's always nice to get mail. That's not a bill, right? So that would always be great, especially if it was from somebody that was maybe lonely, and the children are so great at doing that, sending a picture or something like that. But yeah, even though we're lacking in the physical connection and the face-to-face interaction, there's a lot of opportunities for that. And then another piece I think that's really important is those with autism or that are lacking social skills might have a lot of difficulty with the masks that we're wearing because they're not able to see someone's affect. So if we go to the store and you're trying to gauge what somebody's feeling or what they're, maybe even if they're talking to you, it's hard for somebody to really be able to gauge that. So I think that's really important to remember that we might have to be, more aware that our children that suffer, from those social skill, those issues of social skills, like they might need us to help them to see that better or to understand that more. We also might need to be more expressive, or more vocal when we're wearing our masks. That way our child knows what we're feeling, what we're sensing or experiencing. That way they can learn.
Actually, I think it's really good that you bring that up because overall, how are children going to handle having masks on all day long, especially if they're in classrooms?
Right.
That's really tough.
Yeah, it's really tough for anybody. They say don't touch your face. And boy, that's all I end up doing when I have a mask on because it's uncomfortable. But yeah, little kids or even, teenagers, but especially, maybe those with autism that have a particular sensitivity to certain patterns or fabrics, they're maybe having some particulars with that. That's very uncomfortable for them. And maybe it doesn't feel good and it makes them maybe even irritated or upset. And that can be a hard thing, a challenge for the teachers, to work towards, or that we even have to do going to the store with them or that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'm
Mhm.
even thinking about just all children in general and even
Mhm.
teenagers, having to deal with that all day long wearing a mask. I mean, it must be challenging because the teachers won't be able to understand them and they might not be able to understand the children. So,
Yes.
are there things that we can do to help the children prepare for this?
Maybe even some role play. I don't think that that would be a bad idea. Maybe reminding them that the volume of their voice has to be louder, that they have to enunciate their words a bit more. And maybe if you're working with your child at home, it won't be such an irritant when you're outside of your home doing it, because you've already began practicing that. And I know that it might be weird or kind of seem silly to practice, but it would be a good idea because we've all gone to stores or whatever at this point, and people pull down their masks to tell us what they really were saying. And we want to limit that as much as possible, right?
Definitely. Well, one last question I wanted to ask you for autistic children. Their parents are very concerned about their children having independence because they want to make sure that their child could take care of themselves, because one day they're going to be alone, especially if the parents had their children when they were older. What can you give for advice on helping the child become more self-sufficient so the parents don't have to worry as much?
I think it really is going to be a lot of, daily self-care skills that they're already doing, or maybe they already need a lot of help with, but maybe there's just those reminders, those ways of incorporating it and making it more routine for them. So maybe there can be a sign in the bathroom that has little pictures of the things that they need to do every morning to prepare for school. Maybe it's changing their clothes, washing their face, brushing their teeth, that sort of thing. But because of the picture, it's a reminder, and it's also a checkoff system. And then also, helping them be aware and responsible to set their alarms in the evening to wake up in the morning, setting their reminders on their phone, or maybe using their Alexa to set reminders for what they need to do, which would be, a way of building that responsibility. Also, we're trying to still create an environment for learning and a structured environment when school starts again. So maybe having them pack their own lunch, pack some snacks, try to make it as conducive for a learning and school day as possible. That way they feel that they're set up and ready. Maybe there's a little bit less of that worry or that anxiety around what's next if they had some clear ideas of what was next, and, giving them the responsibility to do that.
I think that's great. Well, for teenagers, we know that there's normal teenage angst. And now put a pandemic on top of all of that. How can parents help them with the social isolation? And for some, not being able to return to in-person schooling.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really important to help teenagers name their feelings, identify what they're experiencing. We need to be mindful that teens are really insightful about their own feelings, and also noticing the feelings of those around them. Chances are they've already recognized the stress that their families are going through, and maybe they're open to talking about it, or maybe they're internalizing it. So, feelings are going to surface one way or another. And like so many of us, teens are noticing feelings of disappointment and discouragement, anxiety, loneliness. So they have to have a way to express this. So honestly, sharing and talking with your teen is going to be most helpful. I know not all teens are very vocal in sharing. But having this avenue for them to share is very helpful. So you talk with them in the car, you ask them to go on a walk with you, you sit with them, you have a journal that you share thoughts or feelings in, and you pass back and forth. These kinds of things are going to be helpful. Dinner time is a really great time to sit down as a family and talk. You might have, a game that you can keep at the dinner table that has conversation starters or different things to build those communication techniques. I think that's just being able to talk, name their feelings, have a place to share.
That's great. I like that idea of having a journal that you would pass back and forth.
Yeah. Some teenagers in general, they have a hard time saying the words out loud because their emotion comes first. So mom and dad are going to get their emotion before the words. And then mom is maybe pulling from that emotion, or dad, and then it just turns into something it wasn't intended to be. So I think that having the journal may be a way of just talking back and forth. It takes away the drama, right? But it just gets down to the root of what they want to share and what you want to share.
I like that a lot, because sometimes kids might just explode. And a lot of times it comes at the mom, and we might not even have anything to do with it.
No,
So
and you're really caught off guard.
Right. So how do we handle a child who just all of a sudden explodes in emotion?
I think the really important piece is letting them know that you want to hear them, right? Like letting them know that you really are there. I'm with you. Like I can tell that you have something really important to share with me. I want to talk with you. Just right now might not be the best time because I want to give you my full attention. I really care about this and I really care about what you have to share with me. Can we do this in a little while? Can we do this after dinner? Can I go on a walk with you and you tell me what's going on? Or can we go sit in your room? I'd really love a space that just us, just for us to get to talk. So yeah, really just giving them that space and being able to affirm that I feel that this is important for you and I know and I want to be here for you. So let me do that with you. But let's change gears or let's go somewhere private or mom's right in the middle of this and I really want to hear you, but I can't right now, right?
Well, I think it's important to realize that you can't be in the emotion too, because that just
Mm-hmm.
escalates it. And I
Mm-hmm.
think and I could be wrong. I'd love to hear you on this, but I think it's important for the child to learn how to deal with their emotion.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So yeah, going backwards a little bit, naming it, because it's so easy just to say like, I'm mad, like I'm annoyed or I hate this or whatever. But why don't we break it down a little bit, really helping them understand what exactly it is that they're feeling? What are some other words to describe that? Kind of getting to that root cause. Because once we find out what that root cause was, what really set them off, what really took them to that next level, they're going to be able to look at that and see that and really then figure it out. Recognizing too, is this in my circle of control? Am I mad about something that I have any control over? Or is this something that I'm trying to control that I won't be able to, and kind of giving them that responsibility back. But I think it's really easy to, a lot of people these days, if they're feeling upset or worried, they might just distract themselves from that feeling. We really got to get into that feeling. We really have to name it. We really have to identify it and really start to change it, or it's going to continue to come back.
Well, that's interesting because families, have to cope with adolescents that are having severe depression and anxiety. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's probably a really great way for them to sort of cope with that. But on the other side too, how do we during this pandemic motivate our kids? Like how do we get some of our adolescents to be motivated to do more than just sit in their room on video games and whatnot?
Mm-hmm. So, when I spoke a little bit earlier, I shared that I was trying to get students to really, recognize what they're doing and kind of help them see that you're giving yourself a choice or an out to this schoolwork or to this class. But that's not really the case. You don't have an out. Like this really is important. And the reason it's important is because you have this dream, you have this goal. What is that? This is your avenue there. So kind of taking it from the small assignment in my English class to really kind of motivating and looking forward. I know this feels hard. I know this feels stressful. I know this isn't what you'd want to do right now, but this is your job right now because you have this to look forward to and you're working towards this goal. So, really doing that, and putting the responsibility back on them, taking away the blame that a lot of teenagers might put on teachers or the class or the staff. And, they have all this anger and aggression towards it, but really, putting the responsibility on them. This is your job. This is what this is your chore at this stage of life is to do this. But, positive encouragement and love and energy from us as parents, they have to have that. If we're excited about the work that they're doing, if we're eager to hear about their school day, if we want to help them, if we want to know about their classes and their teachers and their peers, we have to ask those questions because it shows them that we are interested. We are motivated in helping them grow and do well. And they need to feel that from us. It's not just on them. We're helping, we're cultivating that in our family and in our household.
One
And I also
last
have an acronym that I give. I have an acronym that I give a lot of people. It's Ohio, only handle it once. because we procrastinate like crazy. We go over things that we know we should be doing. So handle it when it's given out, or handle it as quickly as possible, because the faster that we do that, the faster it's done, right?
I love that. That is so good. Well, the other thing to wrap things up, the other thing I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering about is, teenagers, they still need to be hugged. Like, they still need to be told they're loved and touched. Am I right? Or, because they always seem to like, oh, don't touch me, or I'm too cool, or whatever. But is that true or no?
I personally, we are a family of huggers, and the I love yous are thrown out all the time, and the kisses. Now, I have little ones, so that's accepted by them. They want it, they desire it. You're right. Some teenagers are very much at that phase of kind of saying no. So maybe a better thing would be asking them, like, where's your comfort with this? Because we want everyone to have say over their body, the ability to say, I don't like that, or that's not something that I'm comfortable with. And we should give them that opportunity. But, you're their parent, you're their loved one, and maybe you still want to show affection. I think that it's still great to say the words, but also asking them, yeah, I really want to give you a hug right now. Is that okay? Or, what kind of affection do they love? Those love languages are still important to know about each person, even if they're a child, because we need to know how they accept that from us.
That is great. Well, Rachel, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your wealth of knowledge and all of your advice. I know this is going to help a lot of parents out there.
Yeah, well, Michelle, thank you so much for giving us this platform, to share. And I'm so thankful that I was able to help and hopefully support and provide some ideas for parents. So thank you. Thank you again.
And how can people get in contact with you if they wanted to?
Yeah, so I am a mental health therapist at Linganore Counseling and Wellness in Newmarket. And so I am one of many clinicians there. I'm so blessed with such a great group of clinicians that are, welcome and available to helping people with these same kinds of issues, or a plethora of others also. So Linganore Counseling and Wellness, you can Google that, and it'll pop up. You can see all of our team members and the owner, Mary Holzinger.
Well, that is great. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you, Michelle.